So I'm Steve Cohen. I'm the Chief Architect for Microsoft's Worldwide Public Sector Services. It gives me a really interesting place to view the world from. Basically, as the Chief Architect, I get to have some see into and a lot of interaction with government, federal, state, local projects around the world. A lot of the times when I'm directly involved, it's because they're either large or complicated. But because we engage governments, it gives me a chance to see really how architecture and software, systems design, systems development, and systems engineering really have a chance to interact with communities in the small, state and large governments in the macro size. Specific to this particular presentation, I want to focus on the times when things interact directly with the economies. Economics has certainly been in the news a lot. Economics access directly every day, and it's really a strange side effect of what's happened to software and software engineering over the last 20 years. So to sort of move directly into things, IT systems have really evolved. Originally, IT systems were very, very local. Think back 20 or 30 years, or consider any of the little black and white newspaper pictures you've ever seen of an original mainframe. It was a large piece of hardware in a very small space. And in part due to the physical scale of it, and in part due to the way it was designed, very few people had actual access to the hardware. So you had a single localized source of computing with a very, very limited population able to touch it. And over time, this has really shifted around. We went from mainframes with white coat people around them to mainframes that had some terminals that let people who were locally connected work with them. Over time, we went to more distributed systems where more and more people could attach, but the local compute power actually was falling down. As the populations increased, the interactivity increased, and the focus shifted in many ways from the computing core and the ability to do a thing to the networking interfaces and bringing all of these pieces together. At the same time, the software that was running on these, the solutions that were being built, really were evolving in their own way. That's to say that original applications were very large, very complicated in scale to the hardware they ran on. So original software didn't have a lot of memory space, so by today's scale, it was in physical size storage, actually very small. On the other hand, it was really very focused on a unique set of problems for the small group of people that had access to it. As it moved from the back room to the back office and into the enterprise, as more people and the reach expanded, the complexity of the software itself expanded. Because now it not only had to do the thing that it was focused on, but all the networking in between. Meanwhile, the length of life for a given piece of software solution, for a software system in general, was actually starting to hit the elbow and fall. Old systems used to run for 20 or 30 years. It was not uncommon to find mainframe systems that were incredibly stable, and there are still many of them out there, particularly in the large-scale environments. If you look at the FAA in the United States, they have spent years in varying efforts modernizing, but they've never really completely disconnected from their old systems. And even where they have disconnected, they've basically been replacing one-to-one. It's more of an evolution of the system than a complete loss. That's the exception. Instead, what we see is lifespans that are dropping by 10 years. And in smaller, more focused applications, maybe 5 years. Enterprise applications today very commonly target 3 years as a maximum lifespan, and they assume obsolescence. The side effect on the system of systems is that you have pieces whose basic intention is to fail, instead of something that needed to sustain and evolve. You move fast forward all the way to today, and you find that not only do we have systems that have shorter lifespan in years, but we actually have applications now with lifespans in minutes. By volume, the largest number of applications on the planet are absolutely phone apps. The little apps and applets that people pull down by choice, they pull out of marketplaces, have a completely different kind of life cycle, certainly than the old mainframes. Closer into the PC standard desktop days, but they're really having a life type all of their own. You decide there's something you need to do, you go out to a marketplace, you browse a few descriptions of a handful of options, and you pick one. The entire duration, 10, maybe 15 minutes. It takes a minute or two to load onto your device. You run it. You might run it for an hour, a day, or a week. Every once in a while, an app might have a year. But then, because you replace the device or you're just done with it, you pull it off the phone. The entire life cycle, what used to be 20 or 30 years, is now being reduced into as short as minutes, particularly if you don't like the app that you've downloaded. This creates an entirely different set of cross-correlations with economies. We go back to the beginning of time again, in a way, 25, 35 years ago. Economies were localized. Actually, this is way more than 25 or 35 years ago. It's more like villages and hundreds of years. People lived together. There were boundaries of transport. You were sort of limited by what was effectively the network connectivity. People dealt with each other very locally, and the economy stayed local. Over time, things became more and more interconnected, in part because the ability to transport both people and things became better. We got better with airplanes over ships. We can get even better now with virtualized connectivity, making distance nearly irrelevant. And that's created an even greater intertwined mix between the technologies and the global economics. So these two things have come together. We've got to really start looking at the speed of the transaction, the speed of the decision making. The economies of the world and the markets that drive the economies now are all well informed about each other. I live on the East Coast of the U.S., and in the morning, within an hour or two on the news, I'm certainly going to hear about the stock market in Japan, and the stock markets in Europe, and the stock markets opening on the East Coast of the U.S. And every day, you hear about the impact of the overnight trades in other markets on the new markets that are opening up. And that's all because we can, now that we have access to the data, now we can move that data quickly. This could never have happened, certainly 100 years ago. So this ability to see both reach and lifespan over time have a direct correlation. The time itself has actually become kind of fluid. It's not what it used to be. Now, obviously, 10 minutes is 10 minutes everywhere. And 10 minutes today is the same as 10 minutes 2,000 years ago. But what we can do with 10 minutes has radically changed. If you think back to some of the earliest construction, building castles out of stone, and software systems have frequently been aligned in software architecture with classic building architecture, bridges and structures. 10 minutes when they were trying to build a castle by hand, that was long enough to bring some people together, talk about the problem at hand, make some task assignments, and send them on their way. That's it. One person reaches out to a handful, 20, maybe 30, and it's over. The same 10 minutes, moving forward even a little bit, to say Morse code. Someone who's pretty good at Morse code in 10 minutes can turn out, 200 words or about a page of text. They're not the high end. There are people who are faster, but that's about average. One page every 10 minutes. Well, as it turns out, most